So about a month ago, I started noticing something that didn't feel great. I was consuming what I thought to be a normal amount of digital media, podcasts, social media, YouTube, and it was mostly inspiring and educational, so I thought that was good media to consume. But then I started realizing that it was quietly shaping how I thought without me really noticing it. This caused me to feel more anxious. I was feeling more influenced by other people's opinions and just less connected to my own thoughts and ideas and intuition. And as someone who teaches and creates for a living, that didn't sit right with me. If you don't know me, my name is Rebecca. I've grown and sold businesses. I've restarted my DJ and music producer career in my late 30s, and I've toured the world. I teach music production. I've been in marketing leadership roles, and I've started this channel because I wanted to teach and share on all my experiences I've had with productivity, creativity, and mindset. And so for the past 30 days, basically the beginning of the year, which felt like an appropriate time to do an experiment like this, I changed how I consumed digital media. I didn't cut it out completely. This isn't about using apps to limit the amount of time I'm using things or looking at Instagram, but it was more about becoming intentional on how I was consuming the content that I was consuming. So in this video, I want to share why I did this, what exactly I changed, and what I noticed after the 30 days and what shifted. And spoiler alert, it's not anything to do with being more productive or being more disciplined, but I'll get to what shifted in me after the 30 days. So why I did this, there was a number of reasons. I wanted to be a better teacher and creator, and I realized that consuming other people's ideas was influencing my thinking. And even at a subconscious level. So even if I'm listening to something passively, just listening to a podcast on a walk or as I'm making dinner, I'm in that state where I can take in more information more subconsciously. And so I didn't want others' ideas creeping in without my consciously being aware of it. And it's not to say that what I was listening to, there wasn't great information to take away, but I just wanted to do it, again, more intentionally. I also noticed that me listening to things passively, having YouTube on in the background while I did some work, just felt like numbing behaviors that I just didn't want to participate in, especially when I was feeling tired or overwhelmed. I would have these things on in the background almost as comfort. Another reason, I wanted to be a better critical thinker, have better memory recall, and just reduce my overwhelm and anxiety. I felt like relying less on external inputs like algorithms from social media, content, trends, hot takes that people had was just, again, influencing myself. And I wanted to learn how to be curious again in the way that when I was younger, I used to love to explore and learn, and I would just read encyclopedias, and I just was curious about different things, and I wanted to learn about different things before we had social media and all these outside influences. So I wanted to get back to that childlike state of learning and curiosity. Basically, I wanted to know what would happen if I gave my mind more space to think. So what did I do in this experiment? This is what I've been doing for the past 30 days or so. So I reduced the amount of media that I was consuming. If I went on Instagram, I just kept it to posting, responding to DMs, responding to comments, and that was it. I reduced the amount of thought leaders, teachers, podcasts, just influencers that I was following, just to ones that I genuinely trusted their ideas. And when I did watch or listen to something, I actually took notes with a piece of paper and pen, which I had stopped doing for a while, which I don't know why I stopped doing it, because I love to write down things physically in a notebook. And again, I think this is going back to childhood and going back to school and wanting to be a student again. again and wanting to learn. I love taking notes. When I write things down, I remember them a lot better. They sink in better. And so the end of last year, right when I started doing this, I got this notebook. I decided, let me get a really pretty notebook, and I feel like if I just kept it near me and a pen, and I love purple, that would encourage me to take notes whenever I was consuming media or whenever I had a thought or idea. So also journaling in my notebook, as opposed to I was doing journaling on my laptop. I would still do that from time to time, but again, I think the writing things pen to paper would make things sink in. My ideas, I would just connect the dots better, and I would remember things more. So, I mentioned before I was passively listening to podcasts, YouTube, having things on in the background. So instead of doing that, I made sure I switched to something instrumental like classical, or I love those lo-fi hip-hop channels, those focus and study channels on YouTube, or those playlists on Spotify. So I'd make sure I was listening to those instead and just have those on in the background when I was working, when I was focusing. And then during my free time, I try to cut out the numbing behaviors of just watching things or listening to things, just passively scrolling. And I spent that time either trying to learn, so again, watching podcasts, taking courses, reading, and when I did that, writing those things down. I would journal, I would create, whether that was just playing around with a song idea or ideas for videos that I wanted to share with y'all, or reading. I was reading a lot more fiction. I've definitely been a bigger consumer of nonfiction in my adult life, which has been great and it's been really helpful, but I wanted to switch to fiction to prepare my body more for rest in the evenings too. So if I was consuming a lot or if I was working a lot, I wanted to have other ways to decompress in the evenings rather than just watching a show on Netflix or defaulting to scrolling on my phone. So what happened after the 30 days? So this is where things got interesting, and I was surprised how much shifted and changed in just 30 days. And, I wasn't like super strict about it. Again, I was just intentional is the word that keeps coming up. I was just trying to be intentional about what I was consuming, how I was consuming it, what I was doing in my downtime. When I was working, was I really focused? Did I have things on in the background? I was just trying to be mindful of all of those things. And when I noticed when I wasn't doing those things, I would try to shift and do, all the things that I just mentioned. And so what I noticed, first of all, I felt less anxious because I wasn't constantly consuming other people's thoughts and ideas all of the time. I wasn't comparing my life and my work to others. Also, one of the things that I noticed, and this was one of the biggest ones for me, was my intuition started getting louder. I mentioned earlier, what if I gave my mind the space to think? What happened is that ideas started coming out of nowhere. My intuition started leading and guiding and telling me what are the things I wanted to focus on, what were the things that I actually wanted to create. I was just able to hear that inner voice again and trust it. I felt more guided rather than reactive. And as I mentioned before, when I did consume books, media, podcasts, and I would take notes, then what I also started noticing is as I was taking notes, I was also able to form my own opinions, create my own theories around what these thought leaders were talking about, and actually have some really great takeaways that I can then synthesize and use and share in my teachings, instead of just absorbing someone else's conclusions and then just regurgitating them. Other things that I noticed were my memory recall started improving. I just notoriously have a bad memory, and this is something that I wanted to work on. Again, like I mentioned, the critical thinking improved. So when I was learning and writing down notes and listening to others' ideas, I had my own thoughts that I can form around those ideas and just synthesize them. And because of all of this, I really started, again, tuning into my own intuition and and started really having my own ideas again. And that's not to say that my ideas aren't subconsciously influenced by my life experiences and all the things that I've taken in, but I feel like I've really been able to listen more closely to that inner voice and let that guide my ideas and what I wanted to create and what I wanted to put out in the world. Thoughts would just spark out of nowhere, connections, concepts. I would just write them down as they came, and I just felt like I was reconnecting with part of myself that I didn't even know was quiet. So I guess what surprised me most about this experiment was it didn't just make me feel calmer and more focused. It was how quickly my own thoughts and ideas came back online. I'm not anti going on social media. I'm not anti listening to others' thoughts and opinions. I'm just much more now aware of how easily we can outsource our thinking to others and how powerful it is to just create a little bit more space for your own curiosity to even be bored again. I was so scared of being bored, and just being able to reconnect with my own thoughts and my own intuition and feelings. If there's one thing that I hope you take away from this video today, it's not that I'm saying you need to consume less. I just want you to think about how you can consume more intentionally. So I'd love to know if this resonated with you. Have you noticed your media consumption affecting your anxiety levels, your creativity? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to learn how to plan out your weeks with more intention, more based by your own natural creativity cycles and energy, I suggest watching this video where I show you how I plan out my weeks using this Notion template that I use, and it's an energy-based planning system called the Creative Energy Map. So watch that here, and I'll see you in the next one.